everyone, and welcome back. This is our segment on innovation talks or conversations. Just to give you a little bit of background, many enhancements to the acquisition and requirements development process have been achieved by federal agencies. And these enhancements may or may not be known to the general public or other agencies. During this segment, we will offer insights from several agency representatives who will provide a description of a problem that their agency faced, the innovative process or tool they utilized to remedy the problem, and what will or were, if it's taken place, the outcomes or the benefits to those changes. Now, each of our presenters will have 15 minutes to address the audience with their innovative solution or requirements gathering solution. At the end of their presentation, you will have an opportunity to ask questions. So without further delay, please join me in welcoming Mr. Larry Ford, Learning Director, Services Acquisition, Defense Acquisition University. Come on up. Do we want all of the panelists?
On the podium.
I'm sorry? Give you the view? Great. That's good. Good morning. My name is Larry Floyd. I work at Defense Acquisition University. We're part of the Department of Defense, as you might imagine. We're a corporate university, and as such, we deliver learning environment, learning courseware. We deliver classes, workshops, all sorts of things, and what I'm here to talk to you about is one of our innovative efforts that we put together to help teams in the state that you may be in. You may be in a state where you have teams that are forming as we speak. They're forming to develop their requirements. And these teams may not come already pre-handmade, pre-selected with the right skill sets, the right know-hows to do the kinds of critical activities that we talked about earlier this morning in terms of market intelligence, market research, and then, oh yeah, let's define the requirements. How are we going to do that? What are some of the techniques that we can use to do that? So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the techniques that DA uses to do that, because guess what? We have all sorts of very broad-based missions, like many of you all do. And we have teams that are comprised of acquisition professionals and non-acquisition professionals. Well, guess what? Most of the folks in the acquisition business have not done a new, fresh procurement from RFP all the way to award, let alone the non-acquisition professionals. And these are the folks that own the mission, right? So these are the mission owners. These are the folks that are the key stakeholders. So we want to be able to ensure that we integrate and bring together the key stakeholders. And who's one of the most critical stakeholders here, right? Who's performing the work? The contractors, the folks out there that are actually performing the mission that we're contracted to do. So we want to be able to bring together these folks. And we've got, next slide, please. This is the Services Acquisition Workshop, which I'm going to talk to you briefly about, is an award-winning program. In 2016, the Chief Learning Officer organization awarded Mr. Woolsey, our president, with the Silver Award for Innovation for the Services Acquisition Workshop. Next slide. All right, so this workshop is something that we are requested to do. We don't insert ourselves in the process. We are requested to do so. We have a cadre of approximately 50, we call them certified facilitators. Well, what do we do first and foremost, right? We're a corporate university, so we're in the training and human capital and organizational development business, right? So we're trained to solicit and encourage participation on the part of the participants in these workshops. Because guess what? They're the stakeholders, they're the mission owners, they're the folks that know the requirements. Only sometimes they really don't know the requirements. But one of the key aspects of designing one of these workshops is to ensure that you have the right people in the room. All right, so we want, sorry, that's good. We're looking at accelerating the team through the process, right? This is not something that is, okay, we're back in class again today, take out your notebooks. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a workshop, and we're talking about at their moment of need. And to do this, we put together a trained, qualified facilitator. We actually professionally manage it through the process. We do our own event planning of this. But we come to the customer's location. Because guess what? That's where the stakeholders are. And we fund essentially the faculty folks to go to the customer's location. We have 5 regional campuses throughout the continental United States that serve all of our various customers. Where? DoD is what? Worldwide, right? Or worldwide. So we serve them at their moment of need and at their place of need. All right, so we're foundationally put together in such a way that we're going to help them define their requirements in a performance-based acquisition way. So what does that mean, right? So I used to be a contracting officer, and that just kind of means Part 37, I think, services acquisition, services contracting. We write things performance-based ways. We write them in ways that are outcome-oriented, and we bring together into this design workshop the kinds of activities and tools that helps the team focus towards defining their requirements in a performance-based way. Next slide, please. All right, so what is a facilitated workshop? For one thing, it needs to be highly structured. I don't know about you, but I've been to a few meetings in my day that were not highly structured. Did they achieve the objectives of the design of the workshop or meeting? Not generally if they weren't structured. So, as you see below, we structure it such that the workshop is foundationally set up along what we call the 7-step process. 7-step process is defined in a guidebook, and folks can go study this themselves. We have learning assets, we have distance learning activities that they can teach the process themselves. But the key distinction of the workshop is to bring them into the workshop and facilitate them through that so that what? They perform in a way that allows them to do the critical thinking that needs to be done. Requirements don't get defined by themselves. They get defined by, as some of the panelists mentioned earlier today, subject matter experts. We bring together those subject matter experts. We bring together tools. We bring together a consistent, structured workshop, and we help facilitate them through the critical thinking process. And the outputs are what? And this is what we most critically have to do, is define what the outputs of the workshop are. What are you going to walk home with in your hand, right? Because otherwise we have an unstructured process. No deliverable equals no product, no production. All right, so what we define together with the project sponsor up front. Some teams are high performing already. They're ready to take off and start running. And we help accelerate them through that. Other teams are not so high performing. And some of those teams need to spend some time defining roles and responsibilities of the various team members, right? Because they came as a pickup game. They think it's a basketball court in the city, right? And they don't even know who the guards are, the forwards are, or the center is. So we can help them define what their roles and responsibilities are right at the outset. All right, so most critical, sorry, I get blocked over by every time you send your charts out, they're invariably going to get reformatted, and I'm not holding anybody else to account but us. We don't always have an opportunity to do this up front. So what happens, all right, so the team itself is creating, understanding, and agreeing to what they've decided to be their requirements. So it's a collaborative process. And that's the real key of a facilitated workshop to us, is that they create it, they understand it, and they accept it. Agreement and consensus has its own definition, and we talk about that during the confines of the workshop. Next slide, please. All right, so what is a service acquisition workshop? There's some distinctions here that I'd like to kind of just briefly point out. Step 0, right? We say 7 steps, there's actually 8 if you count step 0 as a step. Step 0 is, it's a health assessment. How well is the team performing? Do they know what they're doing? They're going to give me an idea, or the facilitator that's assigned to help them out, they're going to give us an idea of where they are with all their acquisition documentation. Because guess what? We eventually, in spite of what Mr. Brennan said earlier, that vision doesn't necessarily equate to an easy RFP on the street, right? And I don't disagree with him. Vision is a great place to start, and that's where we generally start at step 1 of the 7-step process. But at step 0, we're doing a health assessment. We're doing an assessment by the particular program manager, if there is one, and the functional services manager, if there isn't, of how they are coming along in their process and where they are at their moment of need, so that we can then tailor this workshop for them. All right, so the teams that we bring together use a methodology within a methodology. The methodology, we call it, is the acquisition roadmap process. All right, so the requirements roadmap process actually has its own methodology to get the critical thinking to happen, to ensure all the elements of performance-based acquisition are part of the RFP document, or the performance work statement, however it ends up. So we have tools that we bring to the workshop. Some people like tools, some people don't. Some people like automated tools, semi-automated tools, it doesn't matter. We have a whole tool set to help the teams do that. Basically, it's technical writing, right? It's critical thinking, technical writing equals document. So the process is to ensure that the critical thinking gets done, and then find the person that's really good with a keyboard and can do the technical writing to ensure that it makes sense. Right? So some of the end products that we've negotiated in the past include draft performance-based requirements, performance work statements, quality assurance surveillance plans, contract data listings, you name it. We work with it, and we work with the teams to do that. The important thing down there on the bumper sticker, that's a highly customized process for the components of the team that show up for the workshop. Next slide. Wow, I'm already there. Any questions? So, nobody's even there in this process. Nobody's thinking about their requirements at this time. No teams are forming. Okay. Do you think of questions later on? I'll be here. Yes, sir.
So, part of this is this joining of industry and government. And I'm Jim Blades, by the way, from Jefferson Consulting. Part of this gathering is to talk industry and government and how they work well together. I've seen this before, and I've engaged in teams that have participated from a government standpoint. Is there any thought to involving industry in this process, in this type of workshop?
Certainly for those types of acquisitions which are already determined to be sole source follow-on candidates for alpha contracting. We have many acquisitions. In fact, I've facilitated a few myself where the actual folks that were in the room were working on a follow-on project that was sole source justified. And while the actual facilitation team did not include the industry partner, in my opinion, that industry partner was well represented with the documents that were brought to the room. Those documents that were brought to the room, the work statement itself, was drafted. It was already in a state of collaborative drafting to the point where the team felt comfortable to go ahead and convene to make those next few steps that it took to actually get the final RFP in a camera-ready format, so to speak. Now, the question, is it designed to be a collaborative effort industry? It's not intentionally designed that way. However, that is something to consider, isn't it? So I appreciate you bringing that to our attention. And certainly, we don't define who, other than minimum and essential people in the workshop, we don't define who they bring. If they think it's going to help them to get the ball across the finish line, to bring their industry partner there at that moment of time and moment of learning need, I would not support it. I would definitely support it. Other questions? Well, thank you. Like I said, I'll be here at least for the first 15 minutes after we break this particular panel for any questions that may want to come up to me and ask on the side. Eliana, who's been mentioned before, is working with DAU to perhaps take part of what we've been doing here and to see if it's exportable and importable to other federal civilian agencies. And so, thank you very much.
Now, for our next presenter, help me welcome Ms. Polly Hall, Strategy and Learning Lead. I'm sorry, Strategy and Planning Lead, Procurement Innovation Lab, Office of the Chief Procurement Officer, Department of Homeland Security.
Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. I think they're literally raising the roof above us, so let's get some good energy going in here. I am really thrilled to be with you today. As mentioned, I'm the strategy lead for the Procurement Innovation Lab at DHS. I'm joined by the very able PIL team here today. You'll be hearing from our fearless leader, Eric, during our lunch break. I have 4 slides, and I guess we don't have the advancer, Haley, so you can go ahead to the next one. Thank you. I have 4 slides today that will walk you through our structure and ConOps, and then our experimenting and sharing model for the PIL. The intention here is to spend a little time on the what we are and a lot of time sharing real stories of actual procurements that we've supported and share a little bit about those outcomes. So first, we were established in March of 2015 by Soraya Correa, our Chief Procurement Officer. She intends to create a culture across DHS where smart risk-taking and innovation is encouraged. Matthew said this very well earlier. It is not about compelling, it's about encouraging. So we really are trying to build from the grassroots up a culture to affect positive changes and improve our procurement process at DHS. Our collaboration structure centers around strong engagement throughout our different components at DHS. We talked earlier about the Acquisition Innovation Council, and Eric serves as our AIA at DHS, but we've also established a AIA council within DHS, so a DHS AIA council with a lead at each of our components to encourage that we are communicating and sharing on a regular basis instead of operating in silos. The other component and aspect to what we do is make sure on a regular basis that we are here at these events, that we are working with our other agency counterparts and with industry to make sure we are getting good new ideas to bring back to our agency, sharing our ideas that we've tried and experimented on so others can refine and use them and grow them even further, and to continue that, that discussion. We have strong leadership support, and that's a key reason for why we are successful where we are successful. Our leadership encourages us to take those risks, and they also have our back when we don't. And that is the key, I think, to allowing this culture to grow, is that when mistakes happen, when things don't go as planned, it's an experimentation model. We're going to learn and grow from that and improve moving forward. Next slide, please. Testing and sharing. So this is our ConOps. And the intention here is that we take actual procurements and work with the procurement teams to develop really good, strong team practices. We help and we care about the entire acquisition lifecycle, right, from requirements, which is a major theme of today's conversation, all the way through to performance. But we recognize that where we have control and the subject matter expertise is around the acquisition strategy through award phase. And so that is really where our focus and our concentration is. We bring the team together and encourage regular communication. So we develop, basically we call it our agile team. The contracting officer, the program manager, legal counsel, and then ideally policy and the core if they're already identified and involved. And we meet with them regularly, every 2 weeks for at least 15 minutes, and find out where they're at, what their challenges are, what they're going to be working on over the next 2 weeks, and how we can help. Our job is not to make decisions for them. Our job is not to review and redline everything they do. It is to serve as a consultant, an advisor, and their biggest champion to make sure that what they're trying to do in their procurements has our support and our good ideas, and then we help them execute that. So we can draft sections L and M with them. We can help them think about their communications plan with industry throughout that procurement process, but ultimately the contracting officer is the decision maker. And we really respect that because, again, developing that culture from the ground up means we have to empower our teams. So we don't serve as a red team where we come in and execute. Our level of engagement is where the team is comfortable with. These are voluntarily brought to the Pill. So a team approaches us, it can be the contracting officer or the program manager, and then we support them where they want to be supported. That means that not everything that comes out of the Pill is going to be perfect. We want our contracting officers to own that procurement and grow and learn along the way. We just help them so that those decisions and outcomes are the best that they can be. And another thing I want to cover here is what we mean by innovation, right? Because I think that's a key factor. And in fact, a conversation I had earlier this morning with somebody here. The way we define innovation is what is new for that team. So yes, oral presentations might have been being done throughout the federal government. Maybe it's that team's first time using oral presentations or meeting one-on-one with industry. So whatever the innovation is, whatever the goals and outcomes they're trying to drive toward is, if it's new for them, it's an innovation for us. And the innovations can come in the form of evaluation techniques, evaluation factors, and even sometimes more importantly, the process of, the procurement process itself and how they can streamline and make that more effective. Next slide. So I'm going to spend a good amount of time here sharing some stories and then talking a little bit about how we're sharing these stories forward. One of the major objectives that procurement teams have come to us about is reducing time to award, with the outcome being not just a shortened acquisition life cycle, but the focus on delivering to the mission sooner. These capabilities are needed now. We can't take a year to acquire them. So I'm going to share two stories. One is the service management tool procurement, and then the other is the financial systems modernization services procurement that were recently awarded, but one 2017, one this year earlier. And share a story with you about these. I want to start by saying that we have completed 18 procurements through the Procurement Innovation Lab to date. Already this year for fiscal year 2018, we have 21 procurement teams that we're supporting. So we are really starting to grow, and these stories and the successes and sharing them forward is helping us achieve that growth. The service management tool was an acquisition for a commercial license and service requirement to basically migrate multiple instances of a service management tool from the DHS data center over to a cloud-based solution, consolidating those services into one solution. The procurement team opted to go under FAR Part 8. They did an a task order off of GSA IT 70, and they really maximized the flexibilities of FAR Part 8.4, and used a streamlined two-phase approach to make this award. By doing so, this $58 million task order award was made in 42 days and resulted in the savings of $13 million. So what happens a lot of the time in the federal government, tell me if this is true, is that we treat everything like it's FAR Part 15. And we don't take advantage of what we can achieve by using what exists for us in our federal regulations. And so this team really focused, and that was their goal. They wanted to, quote unquote, stay in their lane. That was from the contracting officer himself. So we helped support that process. They had 2 phases. Phase 1 was basically a self-certification, growing out of the idea from GSA Alliant, HTRRP, right, highest technically rated with fair reasonable price, required a lot of self-certification. So phase 1 was some self-certs. They had to certify that they were FedRAMP certified, that they had an OEM hosted cloud solution, OEM certified key personnel, and a few technical attributes that were basically minimum go, no-go requirements. After phase 1 was evaluated, offers were invited into phase 2, which centered on interactive oral presentations. I want to give you some feedback, and one of the things I did not mention that I should have is that out of each procurement that runs through the PIL, we are really focused on learning. So we conduct post-procurement interviews with the program manager and with all offerers, both successful and unsuccessful. They're 30-minute interviews that we conduct over the phone. They're non-retributional. We are there to learn, and we want the feedback to be genuine and authentic. We consolidate that feedback and share it with not just the acquisition team, but with our other acquisition workforce members across DHS through our sharing efforts. Out of these interviews, though, we get a lot of really important feedback. Sometimes really great ideas on how to continue to grow and refine what we're doing. In this instance, though, the program manager stated, in previous evaluations, we sat in a room and read through tons and tons of volumes of written technical proposals. Then we had to write up reports for each one, trying to interpret what was written and think we understood it. For this one, it was quote unquote very cool. How often does a technical evaluator say an evaluation is cool? That's pretty awesome. It was very cool. The PowerPoint submission was the only written documentation we had to review. And during oral presentations, we were able to ask questions on the spot that same day and get answers. It provoked a better understanding of what we were buying and better outcomes for our award. So that is the first story I wanted to share. The second story, financial systems modernization, system deployment agent. We were transitioning financial systems management for 3 of our DHS components over to DHS from a shared services provider. The requirement was pretty complex. Again, 3 of our components were involved, and we were under a timeline. So this procurement team had a lot to do. This was under our DHS Eagle 2 strategic sourcing vehicle, and they also used phased acquisition and on-the-spot oral presentation model. But that wasn't what was really important here. What was really important here is that they took the evaluation process, streamlined it, and required a very collaborative, team-based approach. They met daily, in person, and were able to make this $82 million award in 57 days, saving over $45 million in the process. The contracting officer said that the streamlined process was tremendously valuable, and she was able to learn from that, she said. It gave her insight into how to accomplish this for future procurements. More important, the approaches the PIL provided us with helped the technical evaluators stay on the same page throughout the evaluation process and evaluate according to the factors specified in our solicitation. It facilitated the award in a very compressed manner. So this team-based engagement consensus documentation being done in real time with the contracting officer, legal counsel, and the technical evaluators in the same room together was the secret sauce for this procurement. On the next slide, or sorry, excuse me, on the bottom, if you can go back, Kelley, I'm sorry. Thank you. Reducing burden to industry. 2 other stories I'll quickly share. The first one, our electronic contract filing system. Here, the outcome was to make sure industry has better investment decision-making capability by giving them better insight and a more streamlined process. This was a GSA IT Schedule 70 buy. It was a 79-day to award for a 9.7 million estimated volume single award BPA. They also used a phased approach. And here it was really about making sure that industry understood what we were doing and had the opportunity to get in front of us with their product and solution and show us what it is that they were offering. So again, phase 1 was focused similar to the service management tool on minimal technical requirements validation. It was a self-certification checklist. Phase 2 was a product demonstration, and it was an interactive product demonstration that the vendors came in, showed their solution. There was kind of an executable, show us these things, but then questions were asked and they were able to show the solutions and the scenarios that they were able to solve through their software. So this is kind of a lessons learned forward from Flash, right? Our vendors from Flash said, the show me, don't tell me model, you need to keep doing that, DHS. So this team said, we're going to do that. And instead of reading volumes of documentation and taking months to do it, we're going to get the vendors in front of us during the evaluation phase, do a product demo, and make our reward accordingly. This, again, very limited technical documentation. They did have a 3rd phase here that did past performance, a management plan and price. But again, that was minimal, and only those offerers that were invited to phase 3 had to deal with that paperwork burden. Finally, the facility operations support services was a really great procurement that focused 2 phases, video proposals and oral presentations. Minimal documentation, 2-phase. Offerers had ample time between the phases so that they didn't have to work on phase 2 submissions before phase 1. And the intention here is to get in front of offerers, let them, industry, get in front of us and evaluate more effectively. Our final slide is really about when we are working with our procurement teams. We want to make sure that we can share this with our greater acquisition workforce and build our culture up. We hold PIL webinars on a regular basis. Our last one, held this Thursday, had 708 participants. It was on product demonstrations using the ECFS case study as well as another one from CBP as examples where we shared the solicitations, the evaluation documentation with our workforce so that they can use them, refine them, and learn forward. We also have a DigiBadge micro-credentialing program that is growing that encourages our COs to get engaged in the process, attend these workshops and webinars, try these innovations, and once they have, they get a DigiBadge. And finally, we're trying to grow even more. We are developing a 1-day intensive PIL boot camp for our acquisition workforce members, and that's going to launch in May. Any questions? It's a great question. We use for those metrics, it's date of release of solicitation to award date. Okay, so the planning phase before solicitation release is not part of that, but we are tracking that as well. Our hope is that the longer we take to plan, and that's plan well and plan early, the shorter our time frame between a solicitation release and award. Good question.
Were there any protests on any of those?
On the 4 examples that I provided, there were no protests. There were no protests. That doesn't mean we haven't had protests. We have.
Hi, Paul Baumann with Ames. Want to find out, is DHS moving to this accelerated procurement process overall?
That's a great question. You know, time to award is obviously something that matters, right? And the key reason there is not just because we want to be efficient, but because our mission needs those requirements, right? And we can't take that long to get that, especially around IT, right? By the time we finish a procurement, the solution's changed. So shortening time to award is a really meaningful objective, and it's one that the majority of our procurement teams have come to us with as one of their objectives. But each procurement team defines what's important to them when they come into the pill, and we help them shape their procurements accordingly. But we are keeping track, and that's not to compare one to another, but to show how certain techniques can help us become more efficient.
Can you go back over what you mentioned on the financial systems modernization? You said something about a consolidated team or legals. And what you do that's real time and everyone's together.
Yeah, isn't that great?
Yeah.
And it's a learning process, right? The reality is currently our